Greetings, mountain family. It's been a long and cold winter. However, I was happy to be able to get out and get some photos of the beautiful mountains in my old Kentucky home. And I haven't been able to share many quilts with you lately, but don't worry, I have so many exciting things coming for spring. So many fun ideas, some beautiful patterns, some beautiful fabric, and great projects. So I hope you'll stick around for that. But for today, I have a special recipe that you might want to make for your Valentine. Homemade biscuits with strawberry preserves. And at the end, a recitation, a love story. Homemade biscuits. We start out with 3 cups of self-rising flour and a half a cup of Crisco shortening. You can use lard if you have it. I didn't have any on hand, so I used Crisco. And just like in the other dough recipes I've shared with you, like the dumplings and the dough for the apple ham pies, we're just going to work with our hands and get that grease broken up and in that flour real good, mixed up. I got this recipe from an old Appalachian cookbook that I have used for years. It was a gift from my mother-in-law, and I have loved that book. The Appalachian Cookery, I believe, is the title. I'm going to add a cup of whole milk to the flour and the Crisco and stir that up. I'm using the bread bowl that my mother gifted to me. And like I said, this is a simple recipe, 3 ingredients. You could use buttermilk if you wanted to, but the recipe that I had in the old cookbook called for milk, and so that's what we use. We're going to use a cast iron skillet. These will come out so fluffy and beautiful. It's just hard to believe there's only 3 ingredients in it. You know, a lot of people think that homemade biscuits have to be hard. Well, these are not at all. And so you're just going to work that together until a dough starts to form. But be a little bit gentle with it. You don't want to overwork it. You want them to be light and fluffy. And so I'm going to put a little flour down on my countertop. It's clean. And we're going to get our dough and gently just kind of form it. Again, not being too rough, not overworking it, so they'll be light, fluffy, and tender. We don't want them to be hard. My mama always said treat dough like a baby. So I'm greasing my cast iron skillet with some more Crisco. Now if I'm cooking these for breakfast, I'll use some grease from my meat, sausage, or bacon, whatever I'm cooking with. If I have lard, I like to use lard, but like I said, I don't have any, so I'm using Crisco. I'm going to flour my rolling pin and just gently start to roll these out until they're about 1 inch thick, about as thick as my cutter. And you'll see here in just a second that I am using a special biscuit cutter. Blaine's grandmother, Ann Mike, Ann Irvin Mike, she was a wonderful cook, and he said she always had homemade biscuits and ham every Sunday morning. He has such fond memories eating breakfast in her home. I'll never be able to make gravy like her. She made that old good dark brown gravy. It was delicious. But those are her biscuit cutters, and there was about 3 or 4 different sizes that she had. And I was so blessed and fortunate to be able to receive those. And so we take great care of them, and we think about her every time that we make biscuits using that cutter. And you can see how handy it is. It's got little handles that you can just pinch and kind of wiggle it around to cut the dough. And you can see, like I said, I'm cutting them about as thick as the cutter, about 1 inch thick. Sometimes I cut them a little bit thicker, but this will get you a nice pan full. Just kind of move them around gently. I always save some dough for my Meredith. I want her to learn how to cook, and so I will put some dough to the side and let her roll out some biscuits. And so you can see after 400 degrees for 12 minutes, these turn out beautiful. And I take about a half a stick to a whole stick, just depends on what you like of melted butter, and I pour over it hot. You'll hear them sizzle in the bottom, and it makes the bottom of that biscuit so nice and crunchy, and the tops are beautiful golden brown. And I just let that soak for a second. I like the middle biscuit because I like how fluffy. You can see how thick and fluffy and soft it is. So the middle biscuit's usually what I go for, but I picked a pretty one there on the edge. It had nice crunchy edges, and it'll have a really soft, fluffy inside. And you'll just cut those open. And of course, in honor of Valentine's Day, I chose to serve it with some strawberry preserves. And so I'll share a recipe maybe later this spring or summer for homemade strawberry preserves. But these were just some that I had on hand. You can use store-bought too. The biscuit is so good it won't really matter what you put on it. You don't have to put anything on it. But I thought that would be fun for a Valentine breakfast. So before you go to church on Sunday morning, get up and make you a pan of these and put you some strawberry preserves on for your loved ones. Recitations, or recitations, however you want to say it, is something that I heard my Papa Ray Parker do all of my life. And a recitation is basically reciting in front of the church congregation a poem or a story from memory. And so how the recitations would go is usually we would sing a song, a hymn out of the redback, and after we sang a verse, we would just play music quietly or hum, and my Papa Ray would recite the story or the poem. A lot of old quartets used to do this. The one that I remember my Papa reciting the most that touched my heart was the apple tree. And with it being the time of year that it is, and Valentine's Day, and talking about love, I'd like to focus on God's love. And this story is certainly a representation of Christ's love for us. And so we would sing, "Lord, I'm Coming Home," out of the redback. And after we sung the first verse, I would play the piano, and Papa would tell this story. And so this is how it goes. I can't tell it like him, but I'll do my best. A minister had just closed a revival in a huge Midwestern town, and he had stepped on the train on his way home and found himself seated beside a young man. Just to kind of pass the time away, he tried to start up a conversation, and he noticed that the young man didn't respond. So he turned and said, "Son, I'm a preacher, a minister. I'd be glad to help you any way I can." And the young man, through his tears, proceeded to tell the story. And he said, "Preacher, 2 years ago I got so mean at home that my mom and dad couldn't do anything with me. But one day I even went so far as to strike my father with my fist. And he told me then, 'Son, I hate to do it, and it's going to break your mother's heart. But we want you to get away from here and just leave this house.' And preacher, I've wandered all over this country for the past 2 years. And then about 3 weeks ago, I gave my heart and life to Jesus. And I wrote Mom and Dad a letter, and I told them I'd be on this old train. I told them I was coming home." And the preacher said, "Well, son, that's well and good, but how do you know you're going to be welcome? How do you know that your mom and dad will even let you go home?" And the young man said, "Preacher, we've lived beside these old railroad tracks all of my life in a little white house. And out behind the house is a great big old apple tree. And I told my dad in my letter if I was welcome home, and he and my mom could see it in their hearts to forgive me of all the pain and heartache I caused, for Dad to go out in the backyard and hang a little white rag on top of that tree, and I could see it from the train, and I'd know by that signal that everything was all right. Preacher, I just can't bear to look for myself. Would you look for me and tell me what you see? I want to go home so bad, and I'm so sorry for all the things I've done. Tell me if you see one little teeny white rag on top of that tree." Well, the old preacher, not knowing what to expect, wiped the window of that old train off, and he looked out. And he had a great big smile, and he said, "Son, you can relax. That apple tree is in full bloom. I never saw so many white rags tied on anything in all my life. And that's not all. Out under that apple tree, I see that gray-haired old mom and dad standing there waving a big old white bed sheet saying, 'Come home, son. Welcome home. We love you.' And you know that's just like God. No matter how we've wasted our lives, how far in sin we've sunk, all we have to say is, 'Lord, I want to come home. I want to live for you. Forgive me of my sins.' And you know He'll welcome each and every one of us home." I hope this recitation was a blessing to you the way that it's been to me through the years. Again, the title of it is "The Old Apple Tree," with "Lord, I'm Coming Home" out of the old Redback hymnal. This Valentine's Day, let's think about God's unconditional love for us. We love because He first loved us. Until next time, from my mountain home to yours.